This is Paul Starybrat, and I am the owner and whatever of Old Brother Productions. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to learn a little bit about Adobe Photoshop and what it can do. The first thing you're going to do is open Adobe Photoshop, and you should see something like this. Now let's remember a few things. Photoshop is the industry standard when it comes to graphic and photograph manipulation. It is a powerful program, which means it is a memory and processor hog. It's a big, huge program. You want to make sure that you really don't have any other programs running. Unless you have a supercomputer, which most people don't, you're going to want to shut off all your other applications when using Photoshop because you want all that processing power. You want it to process things quickly. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on a file. We're going to open that file, and we're going to look for it. And we're going to work on a little PNG file here. It's a company logo. And here we have a company logo. The first thing I'm going to do is you can see I have a grid turned on. For a lot of the things that I do, you need to be incredibly precise. For what we're going to do today, you don't have to be nearly as precise. So I'm just going to shut that off. If you're a Mac user, hit the Command and H button on your keyboard. If you're a PC person, you would hit Control and H. And here we have a graphic, and we're going to make it, even though there's 3 colors here for today's lesson, we're going to make it a 2-color graphic. Let's pretend that the shapes will be one layer and that the words will be another layer. In Photoshop, you do work in layers, so right off the bat, you're sort of ahead of the curve. Let's work on the shapes first. I'm going to show you different ways to do this, okay? Let's make this a duplicate layer. Over here we have 1 layer, but we said we want to make it 2 layers, so I'm going to hit the layer button and hit duplicate layer. And I'm going to give it a name, and I'm just going to call it words. Layer 1, I'm going to rename by double-clicking on it and call it shapes. Okay, I'm going to show you how easy it is to do this sort of work. So I want the shapes layer to be shown, but I don't want the words layer to be shown. So these little eyeballs here turn things on and off. When you turn off an eyeball, it shuts off that layer. Another thing to note, when you have a checkerboard, that means you have no background. Okay, PNGs don't have a background, which ultimately you don't want to have a background, right? When you're working on your Photoshop sort of screen printing stuff. So again, we wanted to work on the shape layer only, so I'm going to select it just by clicking on it. Notice when you click on something, it selects that layer. I just want to work on the shapes for now, and I'm going to turn it on. And I need these letters gone. So there's a lot of fun and easy ways to do this. I can hit this Marquee Tool. Notice when you hit and hold something, what does it do? It shows you different tools. So I'm just going to hit and hold that Marquee Tool, and I'm going to left click and drag my mouse and or trackpad, whatever you use, over that. I want that gone from the layer because I just want to work on the shapes right now, so I can have that printed. So I'm just going to hit my delete key on my keyboard, and that's it. Really easy. Now I have my shapes, but I need these to be black. There are 2 ways to do it, and I'm going to show you one way, which is sort of a manual way, and then we're on the words layer. I'm going to show you a much faster method. Okay, it's good to know both of these tricks. We're going to move over here to this tool. Okay, so this is the quick selection tool. Notice when you hover over it and you just leave your mouse or trackpad there, it shows you how it works, which is really cool. That is true for any tool. Just click and hover over it, and it shows you how to do it. This, of course, begs that you're using the latest version of Photoshop. I'm using, which version of Photoshop am I using? It's the most current one in the cloud, which is 22.2.0. Thanks. Again, just hover over something and it'll show you how it works. But if you hover over something and then left click on it, it might have multiple tools in it. Any of these things that have like a little kind of caret arrow thing going on, it'll have multiple tools in, and that can be really useful. We'll talk about that more another time. But right now we want the quick selection tool highlighted. And you can see that there's the selection tool, one with a plus sign, one with a minus sign, and over here it shows the size of the brush. This will change depending on which tool you have selected. If I use this Marquee tool, watch what happens to this area. Okay, so it has parameters for each and every tool, so you can get really, really custom. And while that might be intimidating when you're a new user, it's absolutely essential to have this. Again, we want to work on this quick selection tool, so I'm going to click it. And we're going to go over here, and you can see that this, when I put the tool in there, it's tiny. I want to make it bigger. Two ways to do this. I can either go here and slide it up, but now it's too big. I want the tool to be able to fit inside the shape. I don't want it to go, I don't want it to be too large. Another way I can kind of resize things, I can use this, and that's convenient. But a much easier way is go on your keyboard and look at your bracket keys. Your bracket keys are close to the P and return keys, all right? You got the left bracket and the right bracket. Look what happens when I hit the left bracket. So left bracket tool, smaller, right bracket tool, bigger. This is much easier than going over here and sliding around trying to find the right size. Again, you want to make sure that your tool fits inside the shape. Now here's something, what if that shape is really, really small? Well, you can blow it up. If you're a trackpad person, just sort of pinch and unpinch, and you can work on the graphic that way. It's very important to be able to change the size of the graphic while you're working on it. If you're a Mac user, another way you can do it is hit Command plus on your keyboard or Command minus. If you're a Windows user, you would swap out the command button for the control. So you'd do Control plus and minus, and it would do the exact same thing, okay? So I'm gonna blow this up a little bit, but I'm gonna reduce the size of the tool. Again, I'm gonna reduce the size by using the left bracket. And look at that, it fits right in there. It's wonderful. Now, notice I have the plus. We want the plus sign there because we're adding a selection, we're creating a selection. If you want to remove a selection, you would hit the minus button. So watch what happens when I hit a left click inside of this red shape right there. It selects it for me. Wonderful. Now, what if I make a little mistake? Well, I could try to get rid of that mistake by making it a minus button, and you can see that it makes it go away. Plus adds a selection. Oops, but didn't add all of it this time because I made a little jiggle wiggle there, and there it is. And you just click and drag. If you have the right size brush, you don't have to do a lot of clicking and dragging, okay? So let me illustrate that a little further, okay? So let's say I make this really small. I click it. It will highlight just because it's highlighting everything because this is such a precise shape. Less precise shapes mean you will have to click and drag around. So why is that useful? First of all, I'm going to show you how to get that minus button. So here we have plus. Look, if I hit Option, minus, gone. What if I go really small, microscopic? Let's see what happens when I left click on it. Okay, so it selected this itty bitty dot, not acceptable. But if I click, hold, and drag, you can see that it'll try to highlight more stuff, okay? That's why it's really important to have the right size brush. You want it to really get in there, okay? Now, I'm making all these mistakes quite purposely just to make things a little easier so that you understand how the brush works. So again, get the right size brush, get it inside there, okay? Make sure you have the plus selected. I'm gonna hit that plus button, boom. But I also have to select this, don't I? No problem. I'm gonna hit the shift button and hold it on my keyboard, and while this is selected, I'm gonna go in here, shift, hold, and left click in here. That both of my shapes are selected. It's wonderful, and this now can be turned black. Look over here, we have our paint well. I have black already selected, but you can just kind of mouse around and change it. But when in doubt, black is always the lower left or lower right. Okay, get that absolute corner there. Bam, hit OK. Black is selected. So I'm going to go over here, and what I did was if you click and hold it, you can see I have a paint bucket selected. You'll see a million different tools in here. I always have it selected for paint bucket tool. And I'm going to dump my paint inside the shape that I selected. It's only going to put black in the selected areas. Perfect. Okay, it's done. And now I could print that. I'm going to go to my file, print, and then I would go and print that thing to the printer that it needs to go to on the transparency. You know that already. Why am I telling you? I don't know. So that is one way of doing it, selecting the area you want black and then painting it black. But there is an easier way, assuming that you've done your cuts and erases. So I'm going to shut that layer off because we're done with it. And I'm going to turn on my words layer. Now, here's a problem. I have my shape in there, so I'm going to get rid of it. How am I going to get rid of it? I'm going to use that Marquee Tool again, make a nice big rectangle over the shapes, just like that. I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard, and now it's gone. But of course, I made a mistake. Why? Did that purposely. You got to make sure you have the right layer selected, okay? So we want the words layer selected. That's what we're going to edit. Just because you turn a layer on and off doesn't necessarily mean it's selected. So I'm going to now hit that delete key, and it's gone. Now I have my words to actually work on. I'm going to deselect that, okay? And I'm going to come over here. Now, to use the select tool in here could get very, very tedious. Ultimately, I just want all these things to be the same color, right? So I'm going to show you a very, very fast way of doing it. Image, adjustments, levels. In here is where you control the light and dark levels of any given graphic. This is the light level, this is the mid, and this is the black. I'm going to take the black level, I'm going to move it all the way over to the right, and look what it does to my words. Everything is now black. I hit OK. I go to my print button, and now I can print that layer out. How easy is that? It's incredibly easy. So I've shown you a couple ways to do basically the same thing.
Let Old Brother Productions help you tell your story.